And on this episode of American Reef, we've got the first of a two-part series where we're sitting down and talking with Shane, the owner of SBB Corals. If you're not familiar with SBB Corals, basically they are the most beautiful high-end type of corals for sale on the internet. So what's really cool about this conversation with Shane is you'll start to pick up on his basically openness and honesty, basically with his highs and lows. And it's something that is not common, with, again, high-end coral growers, because a lot of times you'll hear about all the good stuff, right, and none of the bad. And we know we learn from the bad, right? So again, I find that very refreshing. The other thing that is really cool is the fact that Shane is relatively new to the hobby, meaning, like Mike Paletta, Sanjay, and all those guys, they've got decades into this hobby. But for Shane, he's only been into it for 5-6 years. And so what that means is, for you new hobbyists, you don't need to spend decades to have those kind of beautiful corals and tanks, right? You can do it yourself. And one of the reasons why he's been very successful, obviously, he follows those recipes of those Palettas of the world, right? Of the Sanjays of the world. The people who have done it for decades and laid down that foundation. Now, the way that I started off this interview is I asked Shane, hey, are you a hobbyist, right? And rather than hear from me, let's hear what Shane has to say.
I'm a reef keeper. I love, collecting different types of corals. I love, trying to find new stuff, whether that's tenuis or SPS or mushrooms or ganies. We're also, we constantly are learning about new species, and then, we want to collect all of those. We're basically a hobbyist that has turned into, almost like a business. We started, I would say, about 6 years ago with a little BioCube. And, now we're pretty much running like a full-blown online coral business, where we sell from our private collection. And, it really just started to feed the hobby. And, now it's basically taking us, pretty mainstream with thanks to, the internet and everything going on online.
Yeah, I was going to say mainstream because, like, to me, mainstream, you get in the hobby, you have worldwide corals, right? Well, to me, you are up there with Top Shelf, with worldwide, right? And it's just funny because, again, to your point, you're a hobbyist that has all kind of really cool, unique shit, right? Just to kind of, gut to it. Like from your side of it, what was the first thing that kind of got you hooked into was it the colors, motion? What made it, again, tick for you?
Yeah, no, we always wanted a tank. Obviously growing up and moving around, like when you're a kid, you're not really thinking about staying home and having a tank. And then you go to, college, and then you move, and then you get an apartment, and then you move again. And then you want this tank, but you're always moving around. So I always wanted to try a saltwater tank. I always, love freshwater fish. I used to breed them when I was younger. And, once I basically got my first house, it gave me the opportunity to get, a small tank. And then from there, it's just exploded. We just love the colors, the chemistry, we just love it's almost like a casino, because you never really know what you're going to get next, whether it's an amazing coral or whether you're going to get like a nutrient spike, or whether you're going to ship a package and it's going to be delayed in the mail. And it just, we're just addicted to all of that, and it's just been a wild ride over the last couple of years.
Well, to your point, right? You've got some awesome stuff, right? I mean, Paletta is always, again, he's salivating every time. He's like, "Hey, man, Shane's got this over there." Oh, well, actually, before we get into that, what if people want to see your stuff? What's the best? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? What is it? Is it a website? What do what's the best way to see your stuff?
So probably the best way to see our stuff is through our Instagram account. It's SBB Corals. We also are very, very active on Facebook, SBB Corals. We also have a very active Reef to Reef thread. It's called a high-end tenuous hoarder thread, and we basically go through all of our methods. We also have a YouTube channel. It's also SBB Corals. So pretty much any social media platform. We're just starting to get onto TikTok. We know that that's going to be the new, probably one of the new channels. So anywhere you're currently familiar with, whatever social media you like to be on, if you do a search for SBB Corals, you'll find us. And typically it's that black logo with the SBB white letters. That's how you can identify that it's our page.
And is that also the web address, sbbcorals.com?
Yes, so the website is www.sbbcorals.com.
Okay, so that makes it simple, right? Yeah, because I was just picturing, when I mentioned Mike, and he's always looking at the stuff and salivating. It was one of those things I do a very bad job sometimes of letting people know how to see what we're talking about, right? So at least we got that out of the way, right?
Yeah, a lot of you mentioned Mike. It's funny because I think I met him on the Facebook groups. There's a lot of specialized reef to reef groups, whether it's, the SPS frag swap group or the, Gonapore group. And now BRS has a huge Facebook group with like 64,000, followers. And that's really how I got started, selling corals is in those Facebook groups. And I know, Mike obviously was in those groups and, just posting pictures, you connect with a lot of people online, and that's really how we started.
And do you find that you have enough cycles in the day to like communicate with all the different kind of, we'll say, social platforms? Because there's one Shane, right, versus thousands of again, aquarists.
No, then it's a good point, and I think that really comes down to just the passion of being in the hobby. I mean, when someone, it's really all about this. So unfortunately, this cell phone right here, everything channels right to the cell phone. So, you look at your cell phone, most people are browsing their cell phone and all the pings kind of pop up and we answer there. And then, yeah, I mean, every, morning for like an hour, we try to hit all the platforms, just seeing, whether it's reading up on, what the newest, trend is, or if someone made a discovery in, a new parameter or the way that they test something in their tank, we're just hungry for all that information. So it just kind of naturally flows through.
Okay, so to that point, with the corals that you've got, like I said, to me, you how can I say this? You have places like Worldwide Corals, you have Top Shelf, right? They're on those social medias, right? That, again, they show these beautiful corals, right? Which is cool, right? But that's where it normally kind of ends. You used to have like an educational series on maybe Instagram or something like that. Do you still have that?
So what we try to do is during the day, we do get a lot of questions, obviously, about how we keep our parameters. And we really do want to help. I mean, we want to see the hobbyists really thrive with these corals. That's our biggest compliment, is when someone else posts, like an SBB coral, and then we see it growing and flourishing. I mean, that's our biggest, thank you. And we just love seeing that. So we want to help, and we get questions. So sometimes on our Instagram stories, during our daily routine, we'll just kind of film around, what we're doing, whether it's our dip procedures or our lighting schedules, or we just had something where we set up a new like 600-gallon tank and just how we get the parameters up. At one video, we dosed like 300 mil of alkalinity, and, just like the next day, like the alk went straight down again. It's because, we put like 600 or probably put like 1,000 pounds of live rock in a new tank, and we showed how the tank has to absorb, you know, all of these nutrients and become saturated with them before, you know, the readings start going up. So we just kind of walked everyone through that. That was on an Instagram story. So we share it on all platforms, honestly. You'll see it on Facebook, Instagram, Reef to Reef. If you're on social media, you should see some aspect of our routine and videos that way.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I try to focus on the new hobbyists, right? The guys just getting into it, and to me, providing them those resources are always just an important thing, right? Because obviously everybody has different ways of doing things, and everybody's different ways can be successful. So,
you know, one of the channels we really want to focus, let's start building again if we had more time, but you know, it's YouTube. I mean, if you look at our YouTube channel, a lot of the stuff that have been in our past sales, we'll shoot videos of the actual frags. We've uploaded a lot of those on YouTube. But now it's weird, you know, YouTube, if the video is not a minute long, it'll come up as a short. So if you're taking a quick 25-second video from your cell phone, it won't show up on, it's weird where it shows up. So yeah, we're trying to get longer videos, and with that, we do want to document a lot of what we mentioned in YouTube, so you can go back and reference it, where a lot of the Instagram stories, if you're not looking at it within that 24 hours, like it's gone. So we do capture that for, you know, people who want to research more and more and go back and look at stuff.
Good deal. So, okay, so now how long have you been in the hobby in general?
So in general, I think it was 6 years ago. And, you know, time goes by so quick that it feels like it was 2 years ago. But on my Facebook wall, there's a story that came up, and it said, you know, this picture from 6 years ago. And that was the first little BioCube, 30-gallon BioCube that I got. So yeah, it was about 6 years ago.
So how does one person, and again, I've been doing this since, you know, early 2000s, maybe the video is 2007, right? But how do you go from a BioCube, right, 6 years ago, into those massive, beautiful systems and the corals that you've got? I mean, you know, you got to be humping to get there that quick, right? So, I mean, how did that go? How, you know, if you're a new hobbyist, and I guarantee you, there's somebody looking at it going, "Oh, I want to be like that dude," right? You know.
But yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I guess you can say it's just a pure addiction, you know, pure addiction. You know, I think it's just collecting. I mean, it first started honestly with tenuous. It was searching out and collecting tenuous, coloring it up. To me, that's like the ultimate addiction for me, is finding more and more and new tenuous. And just as this thing exploded, you know, I started collecting more and more. So I needed to get more and more tanks. I think also having the available space to expand that fast also. I mean, I know a lot of people are limited on space. We actually just redid our basement and turned it into, like, you know, our warehouse. And it helped us with, you know, setting up all the tanks. And also my wife, I mean, she let me do it all. You know, she kind of like, you know, she gives me pressure. I'm sure a lot of people have the same, you know, oh, my wife doesn't like this hobby, I'm always doing it. She's been really supportive, you know, during this whole hobby. And that's actually one of the reasons why I'm able to keep expanding this way, is, you know, with her support in all this.
You know, it's funny. A lot of people minimize that, but to your point, the more people that I talk to, I'd like talk to Paletta, talk to Sanjay, talk to any of them, right? And they all have that key element where, again, the wife supports, because the ones that the wife don't support, they're divorced, right? They're gonna like, okay.
Oh wow, is that great? Yeah. Wow.
Right.
I'm telling you, it's like, I mean, I don't really gamble that much, you know.
Right.
But I joke around with all my friends, you know. I'm like, man, this is like the Coral Casino, because you just don't know what's gonna happen next, you know, whether it's a power outage or you're gonna find like the newest tenuous that no one's found, you know. It's like, you just never know with this hobby.
Right. Okay, so to that point, tenuous is you, right? You love them, you're addicted to tenuous, right? If in general, as far as growing corals, which corals do you like to grow versus, because, you know, growth and looking are two different things, right? So you know, from your side, What do you like to look at versus grow versus, recommend to the new hobbyists, that kind of thing.
That's a tough one, but it used to be tenuous. It used to be, wow, this is the greatest thing. I mean, but just a little story. I mean, everybody knows this happens, and it happens to me and everyone out there. We had our 30-gallon BioCube. We had the thing packed with tenuous. Everything was thriving, and then something happened. Lost 60% of it, and it was a little BioCube. And I said,
Right.
man, this is crazy. You spend so much time and money and effort, like trying to get this. I don't know what it was. I mean, maybe it was a PO, whatever it was. It happened, and then that did two things. One, we said, we need a second backup tank. We need two systems, because if this happens, we want to try to at least minimize that risk. And what also happened is we said, man, we gotta start collecting other types of corals, because if we're collecting all tenuous and it all dies, well, now we have nothing to look at. And again, it comes down to diversity and minimizing that risk. So we love growing and we love looking at all corals now. I mean, it's hard to tell you that there's one type over the other. We first started collecting tenuous, then all of a sudden we got the torch bug, so we started collecting torches, and now we have a whole tank set up with torches. And then, oh, goниes are easy to take care of, so now we have a whole tank set up to gonies. And then, oh, mushrooms, and then we started collecting only mushrooms. So like I said, we like them all. Zoes were a big one. A lot of people, when they first got to know SBB corals, it was because of the zoes that we put out. And then all these zoes, like we put out a few, like the Marvin the Martian was one of them, the Hephaestus, which no one can pronounce. They pronounce it hepatitis, and anyone who knows about that zoe knows what I'm talking about. There's the Oscar the Grouch. There's so many zoes, but what happened was we had some issue and all of our zoes died. So we had to, okay, wow. So that's why we haven't put out any zoes for a while. We've now started collecting them back, and we'll be releasing some again. But once the zoes died, it was like, oh no. Then we started focusing more on tenuous, and then people said, oh, who's this tenuous SBS guy? Who's this SBB corals with tenuous? They're known for zoes, and now it's like, oh, they're known for zoes. I thought they were only known for SPS. So it constantly is evolving. But yeah, I mean, back to your question, I mean, we love looking at them all, and we can't tell you there's one over the other.
It's funny because that's how you're a true addict. You talk to Valletta, and I'm always asked, you gotta love something better than another. He's like, I love them all. Right. And he really does. It can be a singularity to again, some kind of, off the wall SPS, and you just addicted to them all.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, this is gonna sound bizarre too, but like now, we got the zoes, the mushrooms, whatever. Like we just got a bunch of cloves. We've never had cloves before, and we just got a lot of variety of cloves. So we're really excited to see now how how those grow and how those color up, and what kind of pictures we can take of those. So right. You'll start to see some cloves coming out, which is probably the lower end of the, of the high end spectrum. But it just goes to show you that there's always something else that you can start collecting and start appreciating in this hobby.
Yeah, very much so, right? Okay, so you've gone obviously through the highs and lows. From your side of it, what are you doing now to try to minimize like the right? Things are starting to die off, right? Just because I know dealing with Top Shelf or whoever, right? They go through painstaking measures to make sure that not only the corals that they get, right, and keep are, disease-free, healthy, etc. But then they want to make sure that the person at the other end who's buying that coral has a great experience with it, and again, that they can chop it up and give it to their friends and that kind of thing, right? So what do you do from that side of it, again, to make sure that you don't get bit by that?
That was like 5 questions in one, so we'll see how the answer goes. But so yeah, I mean, it's again, diversification, just having multiple types of coral. So if one dies, I mean, so there's 2 ends of this conversation now. It's tough because there's the hobbyist side, and then there's the now being like a business side, right? Like, how do you do that as a business, and how do you do that as a hobbyist? You know, I mean, the first one is, as a hobbyist, how do you do that? You know, it's tough because you might only have one tank. You know, you might have one tank, and it might not be that big. You know, the bigger the tank, the more stability. So those swings or whatever that is might happen less. But a lot of people, you know, they have a tank that's, you know, 90 gallons and it's their only tank. And that's a tough question, you know, for them. I think for them is try to minimize the amount of changes that you do. Is really, really minimize the amount of changes. And I hate to say it, I mean, you're going to have to do a lot of research. You're going to have to see what works and what doesn't work. But once you find something that does work, like if you're growing SPS, right? Like I see hobbyists growing SPS for 3 or 4 years, and their SPS looks great and it looks really good. And then they say, Shane, what's your routine? And then I'm like almost hesitant to tell them because I don't want them to change anything. So I've seen people, you know, grass is greener on the other side. They want to change something. I got to tell you, if your SPS is looking good, don't change a thing. Just let it grow and let it be stable. Another big one for those, you know, hobbyists is your RODI, you know, how you make your water. Because I see a lot of people, like my TDS out of the tap is 250. Some people have, you know, well water, whatever it is. That to me is one of the most important aspects of reef keeping, is being all over your RODI machine. And here's what I mean by that. Most people, and if you do research on this, you know, whether it's a company that's selling these products, they say that the membranes can last every year or two. That is absolute BS. We change our membrane every single 2 months. And I think that there's something in the water, even if it reads a 0 TDS, there's something getting through that can contaminate your system. People might think I'm crazy, and they do think I'm crazy when I tell them this, but I've gone, and so just, you know, I know, okay, well, how many gallons are you changing, right? I mean, we're changing a lot. We're probably changing, you know, 1,000 gallons a month, right? We're burning through our machine. So we change our membrane pretty much every 6 weeks. But even those people who have, and we have a dual membrane, 150 gallons, but even those people who have, you know, the smaller version, I think it's, you know, 50 or 100 gallons a day, you see, they're selling that those membranes, you can keep them on for 2 years. When I was using the small one, if I let it go more than 8 weeks, it would still show 0 TDS, but I would see like the SPS would start to lose polyps. And then after a while, every water change I would do over that period, they would just get like this dry look. And I'd say, oh, I did it again. You know, I changed my membrane. It's been 3 or 4 months. So I'll go back, I'll gut the whole, you know, system, change the membrane, the carbon block, everything. And then I'll do a water change and everything starts looking good. I can't explain what that is, but for the new hobbyists out there, that is the number one thing, is you have to be all over how you make your own water. Do not buy water from any, I know this is probably not a good thing to say, but don't buy waters from any local fish stores. If you want to be serious in this hobby, how do you know how often they're going to change their membrane? You don't know.
Right.
You don't know. So you have to control as much as you can. And it starts with making your own water. So that's the number one thing for businesses and for hobbyists. The second thing for hobbyists is, you know, I believe having a quarantine system, because, you know, again, when you're a hobbyist and you have a 90-gallon system and you're packing it with, let's say, torches, you know, if you get a torch that has flatworms, they're very easy to beat, but you're going to have your corals on your rocks. So if you have an infestation, you're not gonna be able to beat it unless you cut the coral off the rocks, which is a devastating thing because you're loving the aquascape. You don't want to do that. So having a quarantine system, you know, is very important. Even if, you know, again, you have a 90-gallon system, go get yourself a BioCube. Very easy quarantine. You can, you know, do that. So just minimizing, you know, anything you're putting in your tank, whether it's pests or, you know, whether it's aptasia. I mean, we all get aptasia, we all get algae. But if you have it in a quarantine tank, you could try to treat it there before you put it into your main system. So the second thing would be, getting a quarantine tank. The third thing is becoming very good with your test kits, I guess. There's such we're crazy now. We have 4 systems. We test out calc, mag, NO3, PO4, salt. We test them every single day on 4 separate systems. You'll see in one of the videos, I zoom in on the chart of the testing. So you can see it all. So testing is very important. We send in Triton tests every single week, which is probably overkill, but for you hobbyists, you got to do it once a month. You're already investing so much money in these tanks. You got to do it once a month. Testing is big. The third thing for hobbyists that is very important is what are you dosing? How are you dosing? And are you testing what you're dosing? Because, one of the things that we early on failed with was, and our tanks look great, but I think this is one of the reasons why one of them ended up crashing, which was a full-blown SPS system. We're using ABCD, reef dose elements, which is really, really a good product. Any of those products are good, but the problem is they're extremely, extremely easy to overdose. Whatever the recommended dosage is on the bottle, it's way too much, way too much. And if you're going to use that stuff, you have to send a Triton test in every single 2 weeks. The main reason why is because some of these things that we're testing for, you can't test on a test kit. Perfect example of it is iodine. Iodine is one thing that is critical for a reef tank, and most reefers that they say, oh, we have a problem, it's either one of 2 things. It's iodine or it's your RODI system is just old. But iodine, if your iodine is 0 or 10 or 15, your corals are going to really, really suffer. So what do people do? They start dosing iodine. It's also really easy to overdose iodine. So once your iodine's over 90, you're overdosed. The problem with iodine is you cannot test it with a test kit. If anyone out there has figured out a good iodine test kit, let us know, post it in the comments, whatever you want to do, but let us know. So the third thing is testing right, and is knowing what your parameters are, especially if you're dosing those ABCD for Red Sea, because how do you know what all your elements are going to be too high? That's the thing. You're going to crash your tank. You're not going to know what it is. Your elements are going to be too high. So those are 3 things. We can go back to more later on. Russ, I'll kind of.
Yeah. Yep.